This video has two aims. The first is to offer a basic understanding of social psychology in relation to what are now largely referred to as conspiracy theories. I won't attempt to discredit or prove any specific conspiracy theories because to do so would defeat my second aim, which is to offer a set of basic perceptual principles that individuals can use to make a reasoned, unbiased and logical assessment of any specific conspiracy theory that they are presented with. The terms conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist are used abundantly in British and American news reporting, often in the bold titles of articles. In Britain, major media sources that have popularised the term in recent years include the BBC, The Telegraph and The Guardian. But what does the term conspiracy theory mean? Let's look at some dictionary definitions. This one is at thefreedictionary.com. A theory seeking to explain a disputed case or matter as a plot by a secret group or alliance rather than an individual or isolated act. Dictionary.reference.com offers two descriptions. 1. A theory that explains an event as being the result of a plot by a covert group or organisation. A belief that a particular unexplained event was caused by such a group. And 2. The idea that many important political events or economic and social trends are the products of secret plots that are largely unknown to the general public. The Merriam-Webster dictionary description is much shorter. A theory that explains an event or set of circumstances as the result of a secret plot by usually powerful conspirators. The description at Macmillan Dictionary is even shorter again. The idea that a group of people secretly work together to cause a particular event. And lastly we have the Cambridge Dictionary, a belief that an unpleasant event or situation is the result of a secret plan made by powerful people. All five of these definitions include either the words secret or covert, but the consensus pretty much ends there. Depending on which dictionary definition you read, the alleged secrecy can refer to either a disputed case or matter, an event, an unexplained event, a set of circumstances, many important political events or economic and social trends, or an unpleasant event or situation. This vagueness of what context secrecy must be attributed to for the term conspiracy theory to apply is a central cause of confusion on the subject. Also lacking in consensus is the definition of who can be the subject of a conspiracy theory. Depending on which definition you read, the secrecy must be carried out by powerful people, a group of people, a secret group or alliance, usually powerful conspirators, or a covert group or organisation. Of the 5 dictionary examples I've given, only the Cambridge Dictionary specifies that the supposed conspirators must be powerful. But even this is vague. Powerful could refer to politicians, religious leaders, bankers, business leaders, gangsters, or anyone else in a position perceived to be of broad influence. Merriam-Webster uses the term usually powerful conspirators, which assumes that in some instances the conspirators won't be powerful. And the other 3 dictionary definitions make no mention of the perceived social or economic status of the perceived conspirators. Dictionary.reference.com includes a secondary description of conspiracy theory as an umbrella term regarding beliefs of secret influence relating to many important political events or economic and social trends. That's a significant departure from the other 4 dictionaries in that it implies belief in conspiracy theories as a broader worldview, or perhaps even a personality trait. However, there are some aspects in which the dictionaries match up by omission. None of them define how many people need to believe in a specific conspiracy before the term conspiracy theory applies, and none of them state whether there needs to be evidence or proof of the alleged conspiracy. So let's summarise. The common denominator amongst these 5 dictionary definitions is that a conspiracy theory refers to a perceived, secret or covert activity conducted by a group or organisation, which may or may not be powerful. Or to simplify it even further, a conspiracy theory is the perception that a group have engaged in a secret activity. Using the dictionary definitions, a conspiracy theory can occur in many different contexts. Here's a selection of hypothetical examples. A belief that one's neighbours are involved in illegal drug dealing. A belief that a government is planning an unprovoked military invasion of another country. A belief that a group of scientists have learned to communicate with the souls of the dead and have withheld their discoveries from the public. A belief that opponents in a card game are covertly working together to cheat their mutual opponent out of their money. A belief that a candy manufacturer has created oversized packaging for a chocolate bar to deceive the customer into believing they will get greater value for their money. A belief that a political party has hidden potential unpopular policies behind ideological rhetoric in the lead up to an election. A belief that our most senior religious figures are nothing more than computer-generated characters. A belief that two men have agreed to remove their wedding rings before a night on the town to deceive other women into believing they are single. A belief that closet fascists are spreading misinformation to undermine the popularity of a democratic government. And a belief that an employee within an organisation has colluded with a friend to create false references on their resume. I've intentionally given examples that range from common social phenomena to exotic ideas lacking evidence. And the point that I'm making is that the term conspiracy theory, by its dictionary definitions, applies to many contexts of human perception, regardless of whether the theories are true or not. However, there's a great deal of literature and study on the topic of conspiracy theories that doesn't follow the dictionary definitions. At the time of my editing this video, the Wikipedia page on the subject reveals the conflicting opinions of its many writers. For example, some of the entries offer the notion of conspiracy theories as being exclusively in reference to opinions held by the general public regarding the activities of people in positions of power. The primary source offered for this view is Michael Barkan's book, A Culture of Conspiracy: Apocalyptic Visions in Contemporary America. But this book is at odds with the dictionary definitions. It narrows the context of what can be referred to as a conspiracy theory down to a handful of topics chosen by the author himself. Another Wikipedia reference page at america.gov contains a series of short rebuttals of so-called popular conspiracy theories. The page claims, conspiracy theories exist in the realm of myth, where imaginations run wild, fears trump facts, and evidence is ignored. As a superpower, the United States is often cast as a villain in these dramas. Now that's a very different description to the 5 dictionary definitions we explored earlier, because it assumes that conspiracy theories are universally false. Although we could consider this an authoritative source, the fact that the US government is implicated in almost all of the allegations it attempts to refute renders the page as a biased source. To put this into context, it would be entirely inappropriate to allow the accused in a courtroom to reinvent the meanings of key legal phrases in their own defense. And the fact that this page only attempts to rebut allegations that are held against the US government, and not those held against other countries or superpowers, further emphasizes its defensive bias. Neither this page or the Wikipedia page explore conspiracy theories that are believed in by governments and corporations. For example, the belief held by several Western governments that the regime of Saddam Hussein was developing and hoarding weapons of mass destruction with an intention of using them against Western countries. The belief held and acted upon by the European Union that Microsoft was deliberately obstructing free market principles to maintain an IT monopoly with its Windows operating system. The belief held by Western governments that the communist Soviet Union was engaged in a global effort to infiltrate and subvert scores of other countries. And the belief held by the Nazis that Jewish bankers and entrepreneurs were a covert threat to German citizens. These are just a few of many historical examples in which governments have believed in and disseminated to the public their own conspiracy theories, sometimes with globally catastrophic results. Conspiracies are actually present at all levels of our society, socially, commercially, and politically. Every day, individuals, corporations, and governments face off against each other in courtrooms, accusing each other of complex conspiracies. Conspiracy to commit fraud, conspiracy to embezzle, conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to rape, conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. These are just a handful of conspiracy theory categories that are debated and settled in courtrooms. Sometimes the accused are found guilty, sometimes they're found innocent. But appropriately, the defence can't win over a judge and jury by calling the prosecution conspiracy theorists. So the notion that conspiracy theories are only held by groups of everyday people against those in positions of power mismatches both the dictionary and legal use of the word conspiracy. Conspiracy theories are actually a normal part of social, legal and political life, but many writers assert that they are almost universally false. The simple truth of the matter is that some are true and some are false, and each individual conspiracy theory should be assessed on its own merit. Conspiracies have played an important role in human history. In times of international war, politicians and military leaders on both sides of a conflict will both engage in conspiracies against their opponent, and will scrutinize their enemies' actions and rhetoric for evidence of conspiracies against their own nations. Conspiracy theories are in fact an essential tool in warfare and are required for effective anticipation and countering of enemy strategy. In some instances, conspiracy theories have played key roles in mobilizing opposition to fascist regimes within nations. For example, pamphlets circulated during the French Revolution contained fictional pornographic illustrations and text that brought disrepute to aristocratic rulers. And some of these pamphlets depicted rulers as animals. Conspiracy theories about the ruling influence of Britain were central to the American Revolution. Without that widely felt distrust and paranoia, America would most likely have remained a British colony to this day. On the other hand, conspiracies can contribute to the creation of corrupt establishments. A classic example was the Nazi dissemination of conspiracy theories about Jewish or Zionist covert influence over world affairs. And more recently, conspiracy theories about Al-Qaeda terrorist networks were used by Western governments to justify the introduction of fascist policies both domestically and in foreign affairs. Conspiracy theories, both true and false, are an essential part of any revolutionary struggle, and those revolutionary struggles can have positive or negative effects. When a powerful organization or ruling establishment is demonstrated to be broadly corrupt, further suspicions and accusations will be generated that, while not always being true, serve as a reinforcement of popular conviction that institutional reform is desired. The classic modern example of this is the big daddy of modern conspiracy theories, 9/11. The explosion of public belief that 9/11 was an inside job didn't occur until many years after the attacks. The interim period consisted of several unpopular US government activities, such as the Iraq War, Guantanamo Bay, and the erosion of the Constitution and Bill of Rights and civil liberties, all under the supposed justification of the war on terror. The resulting loss of public trust in the US political establishment made the population a great deal more receptive to many conspiracy theories, including 9/11, conspiracies that they would otherwise have disregarded. Governments, by their own unpopular actions, often create the public distrust required for conspiracy theories to be widely accepted. Conspiracy theories have historically affected the ideological and political landscape of human civilization. Communists, capitalists and fascists have all held and disseminated conspiracy theories about each other. As society changes at an even faster rate and low-level mass communication technology becomes less subject to centralized control, corporate and political corruption has been far more difficult to hide than ever before. This has resulted in a breakdown of public trust in power institutions generally, at the national and international levels, and it's created a mass appetite for conspiracy theories. Consider these public opinion surveys. In 1993, a Roper report claimed that more than 1 in 5 Americans said it is possible that the Holocaust never happened. In 1997, a CNN poll claimed that 80% of Americans think the government is hiding knowledge of the existence of extraterrestrial life forms. In a 2003 Gallup poll, only 19% of American respondents believed the assassination of John F. Kennedy was the work of a single man, with the remainder being split between conspiracy theories accusing the mafia, Lyndon Johnson, the Russians, the CIA and Cuba. A Fox News poll in 2004 reported that 66% of US respondents believed that the assassination of John F. Kennedy was part of a larger conspiracy. In 2006, a Scripps Howard Ohio University poll reported that 36% of respondents overall said it is very likely or somewhat likely that federal officials either participated in the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon or took no action to stop them because they wanted the United States to go to war in the Middle East. In 2007, a survey of British Muslims revealed that 52% believe that the British security services have made up evidence to convict terrorist suspects, and 24% believe the four men identified as the July 7th bombers were not actually responsible for the attacks. Also in 2007, a poll by the European Jewish Press claimed a third of UK youngsters are not sure if the Holocaust was a myth. And another poll in 2007 on the same subject concluded that 1% of British respondents believe the Holocaust never happened, 4% believe that Jewish and pro-Israeli groups have deliberately exaggerated its scale, and 17% don't know whether it was exaggerated or fabricated. In 2008, a 17-country international poll on the topic of who was responsible for the attacks of 9/11 shows a lack of consensus. Those believing 9/11 was carried out by Al-Qaeda include just 57% of British, 16% of Egyptians, 32% of Chinese, 11% of Jordanians, 57% of Russians, 33% of Mexicans, and 23% of Indonesians. Those believing 9/11 was carried out by the US government include 23% of Germans, 36% of Turkish, 30% of Mexicans, 15% of Italians and 27% of Palestinians. And those respondents who simply said they don't know who carried out 9/11 make up another large portion of the public opinion spectrum, including 56% of Chinese. Again in 2009, an E&T Newsdesk poll claimed that 25% of British respondents disagree that man has walked on the moon. Also in 2009, a CNN poll on climate change did not ask whether respondents thought global warming was a deliberate lie, but 54% of respondents expressed that they believed global warming either wasn't happening or that it was happening but only due to natural causes. Again in 2009, a Gallup poll claimed that 41% of American respondents believe global warming is exaggerated. And in the same year, another university poll concluded that 40.5% of Israeli Arabs believe the Holocaust never occurred. In February 2010, a BBC survey reported that 10% of respondents believe climate change is happening, but that it is environmentalist propaganda that it is man-made. And 25% of respondents believe that climate change is not happening. And in 2011, another survey reported that 14% of British and 15% of Americans believe 9/11 was part of a wider conspiracy involving the US government. As popular conspiracy theories have spread, powerful institutions have formed and disseminated their own conspiracy theories about sectors of the general public. Theories of Al-Qaeda sleeper cells, black supremacists, white supremacists, xenophobic nationalists, paedophile rings and human trafficking have been talked about regularly for years by politicians and the mainstream media. We're expected to simply believe the various claims that we hear about these groups, while rejecting similar claims made about governments and corporations. Distrust and suspicion have come to the forefront of social and political debate in the West. Groups of all types and sizes, including governments, attempt to demonize each other rather than engage in mature discussion. Believing in conspiracy theories is neither a professional occupation nor an academic discipline. We don't tick boxes on questionnaires to identify ourselves as conspiracy theorists, nor can any medical test be done to identify a person as one. The term conspiracy theorist is a stereotyped judgment that can be assumed in relation to any group or individual. There are broad social patterns that lead to some people being described as conspiracy theorists more often than others, but realistically speaking, we are all conspiracy theorists. All of us from time to time will believe that two or more people in a particular context have conspired to achieve a mutual aim, be it cheating in a card game or engineering an international war, and there isn't by definition a lapse in logic to believe that a conspiracy has or is going to occur in a given situation. In fact, there are some contexts in which the public are forced to choose between two or more conspiracy theories, with no middle ground alternative. Example: the alternative to the conspiracy theory of Holocaust denial is to believe in the conspiracy theory of Nazi concentration camps and mass extermination. They're both conspiracy theories. On September 11, 2001, a pre-planned plane hijack occurred which caused mass death and destruction in New York. Whether you believe that attack was carried out by Islamist extremists, the CIA, UFOs or Zionists, whichever view you take, you are choosing to believe in a conspiracy theory. It is near enough impossible for any adult not to be a conspiracy theorist of some kind, because it's a natural facet of healthy thinking and self-preservation to seek out awareness of conspiracies that may affect our lives. Despite these simple truths, the term conspiracy theorist is often used in debate as a claim by one party against the character of another, a cheap and unimaginative way to avoid rational discussion. We already explored the dictionary definitions of conspiracy theory, so let's now look at the descriptions of the term conspiracy theorist. 4 of the 5 online dictionaries that we explored earlier list the term conspiracy theorist as a noun, but they offer no further description as to what it means. The Cambridge Dictionary does offer a description: someone who believes in a conspiracy theory. So this idea that a person who believes in one or more conspiracy theories is a conspiracy theorist supports the notion that everyone is a conspiracy theorist, because everyone believes in many conspiracy theories throughout their lifetime. Since the official dictionary definitions are lacking in specifics, let's look at which people are being called conspiracy theorists and by whom. A Wikipedia list of conspiracy theorists lists less than 200 examples, a small number of which are organisations. The criteria basically includes anyone actively defending one of the theories listed in the Wikipedia article Category Conspiracy Theories, which we've already cited as an unreliable article because of the mixed opinions of its authors and its limited attention to conspiracy theories disseminated by governments. Recognisable names on the list include Adolf Hitler, the Association of Free Press, the American Association of Physicians and Surgeons, David Icke, Bill Hicks, Western Islands, which is a publisher, Gore Vidal, Alexander Litvinenko, Alex Jones and Oliver Stone. The logic on offer is that anyone who believes in something that a Wikipedia author has described as a conspiracy theory is by definition a conspiracy theorist. We don't find the McCarthy or Bush administrations on the list, even though they disseminated widespread conspiracy theories of communist infiltration and terrorist sleeper cells respectively. Surely they should be on the list. An additional blurring of the argument as to who is and isn't a conspiracy theorist is the position of open-mindedness. If a person says that they suspect a conspiracy may have occurred in a particular context, but they aren't sure, does that make them a conspiracy theorist or not? Or how about if another person says that they haven't seen any direct evidence to support a particular conspiracy theory, but that they wouldn't be surprised if it was true? Does that make them a conspiracy theorist? Or how about people who don't claim to understand the truth of a particular matter, but simply assert that they find a particular government's version of that matter to be unconvincing and possibly deceptive? These entertainments of doubt in response to claims from authority are natural and healthy, because without them there would be no public scrutiny of authority. Such skeptical investigation is an essential feature of any functioning democracy. But instead of supporting this democratic function, our media institutions more often than not use the term conspiracy theorist to promote an artificial stereotype. A stereotype in which skeptical citizens who rightly question the actions of power institutions are labelled by implication as paranoid and disconnected from reality. Yet those same news sources feed us a variety of their own rubber-stamped conspiracy theories, sometimes based on little more than an incidental quote or a blurred photograph. The truth is that we're all conspiracy theorists. We don't have access to the boardroom discussions of major news sources regarding their coverage of conspiracy theories, but what we can do is look collectively at their news articles. Fortunately, several news sources have saved me a lot of time and effort by compiling and publishing their own lists of what they believe to be the most popular conspiracy theories. Here's a list of 30 published by The Telegraph. These are the top ones chosen for the BBC's Conspiracy Files programme. These 10 are chosen by The Independent. And these 10 were chosen by The Guardian. These lists overlap in many instances. For example, September 11th, New World Order, the death of Diana, UFOs, reptilian agendas, the moon landings, and the Illuminati. The common denominator is that these are conspiracies disseminated against Western power institutions. Note that these lists contain virtually no examples of conspiracy theories disseminated by governments, corporations, or religious institutions, such as the European witch hunts, Al-Qaeda sleeper cells, the Mukden incident, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, Iran and North Korea, or the Soviet communist conspiracy of the Cold War. Surely these should rank among the greatest conspiracy theories of all time because of their massive impact on power politics and human history. There's also a Wikipedia page called List of Conspiracies Political, which lists over 40 conspiracies, most of which are either proven or at least strongly supported by evidence. With the exception of Operation Northwoods, none of these are featured in the aforementioned mainstream media best-of lists. Surely examples such as Watergate, the Iran-Contra affair, Operation Himmler, Operation Paperclip, the Tuskegee experiment, and the business plot of 1933 should be included in any best-of conspiracy theories list, purely on the basis that they turned out to be true. The reason they're not included in the list by The Telegraph, BBC, Independent and The Guardian is because those lists are specifically compiled according to 3 template assumptions. Assumptions that conspiracy theories are A. untrue or difficult to prove, B. disseminated by people who aren't in positions of political power, and C. are directed at the activities of people in power positions in the Western world. That last point is an essential one. So whether the writers are conscious of it or not, these best-of lists are basically acting as an ideological defence barrier to stem growing public distrust of Western power institutions. The terms conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist, which slip off the tongue easily, are basically catchphrases that have been adopted by major media institutions and filtered down into public awareness. The rules of how these terms are used in news reporting doesn't match up with dictionary descriptions or legal usage of the same words. If the true definitions were adhered to, then the terms would lose their potency in news reporting because they would be applicable to far too many groups of people in far too many contexts. Because basically, conspiracy theory is a substitute term for corruption allegation or suspected crime. Instead, it has become a politicized language tool for creating instant polarization in debates of suspected corruption, in which the accused is a government or other powerful institution in the West. As soon as the term is used by one or more large media institutions in relation to a specific allegation of high-level corruption, the debate shifts from a discussion of evidence to a discussion about the perceived characters of those raising the allegation. Because of this simple distortion of language, many important social and political issues have not yet been maturely and intelligently discussed in the limelight of mainstream media attention. The academic literature on conspiracy theories is more varied than that of corporate media. Most of the academic studies I've read on the subject centre around one specific theory rather than the broader impact of conspiracy theories as a whole. The researchers frequently have a bias for or against the conspiracy theory they're studying and seek to categorically claim the theory to be true or false, rather than simply assessing the effect of the theory on the public. For example, Dr. Karen Douglas and Dr. Robbie Sutton of the University of Kent have released a paper called The Hidden Impact of Conspiracy Theories, Perceived and Actual Influences of Theories Surrounding the Death of Princess Diana. The title sounds impartial, but the authors have claimed, our research provides a first psychological examination of the impact of conspiracy theories. Why do conspiracy theories endure when there is no factual support for them, and even when they fly in the face of established facts? Our findings suggest that conspiracy theories may actually have a hidden impact, meaning that they powerfully influence people's attitudes whilst people do not know it. Outwardly, they may deny the extent to which they have been influenced, but in truth they tend to endorse the new information and pass it on to others. This research is being conducted around the author's personal opinion of the conspiracy theory in question, even though they have not officially taken part in any investigation of Princess Diana's death. Their statements ironically shows the hidden impact of personal opinion in their own research. In another example, the Southern Poverty Law Center has published this article, Patriot Paranoia, a look at the top 10 conspiracy theories. The list of 10 that they offer is as follows: chemtrails, martial law, FEMA concentration camps, foreign troops on US soil, door-to-door gun confiscations, 9/11 as government plot, population control, HAARP, the Federal Reserve Conspiracy, and the North American Union. The article carries a specific bias toward two of the topical areas of interest and activity for the organisation producing the report: hate and extremism, especially that perceived by the organisation to be racially motivated, and immigrant justice. Hence the very popular assassination of John F. Kennedy and moon landing conspiracies have been left out of their top 10 list. In contrast to this, the Southern Poverty Law Center cites its own origins in the civil rights movements of the 1960s, which, while being ethically sound, was driven by its own brand of conspiracy theories about governmental institutions. Simple distrust of white men in power for a start. Conspiracy theories that helped ethnic minorities in their pursuit of equality. But today, the Southern Poverty Law Center broadly labels patriotic civil rights movements as hate groups, even though some of these groups want Guantanamo Bay to be closed and the Bill of Rights and Constitution to be restored. The article ignores the fact that peace-loving citizens and civic nationalists, as opposed to ethnic nationalists, also believe in conspiracy theories, as do governments, religious institutions and corporations. Basically, it attempts to label those who do believe in conspiracy theories as extremists. Sociology graduate and US Air Force officer Elizabeth M. Young offers a broader and more balanced opinion in her article, How Conspiracy Theories Affect Society. She acknowledges the basic premise that conspiracies do happen from the small scale to the large, and that conspiracy theories can be based in fact or fiction. She also asserts that conspiracy theories arise in the absence of the truth. When the facts, truth and intent are withheld from the public, then the conditions are ripe for speculation that can range from very sophisticated, well supported by evidence and observation and well presented, to speculation that is to the imaginary extreme. Society has more than enough proof that members of corrupted governments will seek to enrich themselves at the expense of the population. As a result, societies have a revelation limit where the elite, business or government failure to reveal the truth about a matter of great importance and impact leads to alternative explanations of the truth. Then there is the likelihood of accepting the most dire alternative explanation as the likely truth of the matter. Considering Elizabeth Young's assessment, surely the best thing for governments to do in the face of modern, widely held conspiracy theories is to be more transparent and open with their information, rather than using their own national security conspiracy theories as smokescreen excuses for secrecy. Quite simply, the more secretive an organisation is, the more it will be distrusted. Dr. David J. Harper of the University of East London, in his article Some Effects of Conspiracy Thinking and Paranoid Labelling, offers many examples of what I'll refer to as top-down conspiracy theories. That is, conspiracy theories used by governments or other powerful institutions in relation to less powerful institutions or even members of the public. Here is one of Harper's examples. At the height of her government, Margaret Thatcher, drawing implicitly on McCarthyite notions of communist subversion, talked of British trades unions as the enemy within. This strategy of marginalisation worked well in helping her to take extreme measures against the unions, culminating in her systemic breaking of the National Union of Mine Workers during the year-long coal strike of the early 1980s. Dr. Harper also talks of how those attempting to label others as paranoid are not only attempting to discredit the opinions of the other, but also attempting to establish themselves as rational, reasonable and plausible, the polarisation of a debate into an identity issue. He asks, what are some of the effects of labelling others as paranoid? In doing so, we simultaneously mark them as different and other from us, and as abnormally and pathologically suspicious. We simultaneously see them not as knowing what is really going on, but as fringe weirdos, and so marginalise them and remove legitimacy from their views. Thus, when Harold Wilson referred to a plot by the British Security Service MI5 to destabilise his Labour administration in the mid-1970s, a Conservative Member of Parliament called him positively paranoid and urged him to see a psychiatrist. Similarly, following her interview on British TV where she described plots against her by the British royal family, Diana, the Princess of Wales, was said by a Conservative minister to be in the advanced stages of paranoia. Positioning the other as paranoid not only undermines the legitimacy of that person or group's view, but it also serves powerful functions for those doing the positioning. In calling others paranoid, we construct ourselves as rational, reasonable and plausible, an identity clearly valued in Western culture. Another excellent point by Dr. Harper is the conspiracy theory norm within intelligence agencies. Intelligence agencies need credible threats to survive, and threats of infiltration build group identity in the targets of those agencies. Thus in the United States, the conspiratorial accounts on both sides of the Waco siege and the Oklahoma bombing serve to warrant action taken both by right-wing and minority religious groupings, and by the federal government. Thus, following the reported ending of the Cold War, we see intelligence agencies refocus their targeting from the USSR to terrorism, drugs and rogue nations. Moving on to a very different kind of academic source, Cass Sunstein is a legal scholar and administrator of the White House Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. His 2008 article, written with Harvard law professor Adrian Vermeule, is simply called Conspiracy Theories, and can be downloaded from the Social Sciences Research Network website. It offers a variety of theories about conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists, and several suggestions as to how the US government and intelligence services should respond to them. Sunstein and Vermeule cite 9/11 conspiracy theories as the central topic of their article, though they occasionally make references to other conspiracy theories, real and imagined. The article is a long one, and there are many pages worth of quotes relevant to our topic here. So to keep this video condensed, I'll offer a summary of the key points of the article while keeping direct quotes to a minimum. Sunstein and Vermeule's assertions about the nature of conspiracy theories are as follows. A conspiracy theory can generally be counted as such if it is an effort to explain some event or practice by reference to the machinations of powerful people, who have also managed to conceal their role. Some conspiracy theories under our definition have turned out to be true. The examples of Watergate, Project MKUltra and Operation Northwoods are offered. However, the authors explain that the article will focus on false conspiracies and how government officials might undermine such theories. Conspiracy theorists don't suffer from mental illness, but rather a crippled epistemology, the result of limited information about a subject. The authors also explain that people generally suffer from crippled epistemology in relation to most of their beliefs, because most of their knowledge is based upon their trust of claims made by knowledge-producing institutions. Terrorism is partially driven by conspiracy theories, which in turn are driven by limits of civil rights and civil liberties. Not all conspiracy theories are harmful. The example of Santa Claus and his helpers is offered, but some of them can fuel anger and hatred. Conspiracy theories have a self-sealing quality, because attempts to debunk them, especially by governments, become folded into the conspiracy theory. In other words, debunks are perceived as covert attempts to undermine the conspiracy by those responsible or their agents. Conspiracy theorists have a tendency to attribute intention to any given social or political phenomena, rather than accepting that many events are merely circumstantial. The authors acknowledge that in the case of political assassinations and terrorist attacks, this doesn't apply. They state that in these circumstances, conspiracy theorists correctly attribute intention, but to the wrong sources. Conspiracy theorists overestimate the competence and discretion of officials and bureaucracies. And, in open societies, government action does not usually remain secret for very long, because, when the press is free and when the checks and balances are in force, government cannot easily keep its conspiracies hidden for long. Belief in a large government conspiracy such as 9/11 would cause the believer to question everything else their government and its associate institutions tell us. Some conspiracy theories are initiated and spread quite intentionally by conspiracy entrepreneurs who profit directly or indirectly from propagating their theories. The authors cite a best-selling French 9/11 conspiracy book as an example, but add that while some conspiracy entrepreneurs are entirely sincere, others are interested in money or power, or in achieving some general social goal. Whenever a bad event has occurred, rumours and speculation are inevitable, and can be a suitable outlet for outrage and blame. Large-scale social belief or disbelief of a given conspiracy theory is driven by social cascades, which means that the more people are demonstrated to believe it, the more people will consequentially adopt the belief. It can also be driven by being initially communicated by trusted sources. The spreading of a conspiracy theory begins with people who have low acceptance thresholds. By this, the authors are referring to people requiring less evidence in order to believe something, and gradually spreads to people with higher acceptance thresholds, at which point the social cascade effect kicks in. The acceptance by an individual or large social group of a given conspiracy theory is heavily determined by their overall belief system, especially when those belief systems involve a generalized distrust or hatred of the source that the conspiracy is to be blamed on, the hatred of America, for example. Some people outwardly express belief in a given conspiracy theory because they believe it is expected of them among their peers. They don't want to face their hostility or lose their good opinion, lest they be seen as some kind of dupe. The authors call this a reputational cascade. Conspiracy theories can be driven by group polarization, in which people are increasingly driven into camps of extreme agreement and disagreement based upon identity rather than rational discourse. Members of conspiracy theorist groups can become informationally and socially isolated because of the self-selection of group members based upon required acceptance of particular conspiracy theories, and the leaders of the groups can create barriers on what kind of information is shared in the group. Sunstein adds that, benign actions that happen to disadvantage the group are taken as purposeful plots intended to harm. The breakdown of conspiracy theories offered by Sunstein and Vermeulen is the most detailed and specific that I've yet found, and it contains some very accurate insights. However, there are also many logical flaws contained within. The first major flaw is that the authors assume that they personally know which conspiracy theories are and aren't true. They assert that Operation Northwoods, MKUltra and Watergate were true conspiracies, yet categorically deny that the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the moon landings or the 9/11 attacks were conspiracies in any way. Specifically, they cite the widely believed 9/11 conspiracy theories as being a danger to the US government, and thus the key motivation in writing their article, rather than providing an impartial study of the phenomena of conspiracy theories in general. So there's a strong public relations bias in their research and presentation, primarily their desire to find ways of widely discrediting 9/11 conspiracy theories. However, they do express some awareness of this thought. Throughout, we assume a well-motivated government that aims to eliminate conspiracy theories or draw their poison. The second major flaw is that despite their best efforts in coining new terms such as crippled epistemology and reputational cascades, the authors believe conspiracy theories can only be the result of irrational thinking, with the exception of conspiracy theories that those two authors personally believe in. Basically, they are asserting that if Sunstein and Vermeulen believe that there has been a conspiracy theory, then there really was. But if they don't, then anybody else who does think it was true is wrong. Another major flaw is that they write from the wishful assumption that America is an open society with a free press. Yet there have been many studies explaining that the press in America has been increasingly monopolized into fewer and fewer hands. We could call this a crippled press. Another major flaw in the article is that the psychological and behavioural processes leading to acceptance of conspiracy theories can also cause rejection of conspiracy theories. For example, the act of outwardly pretending to believe a conspiracy based upon peer pressure is even more likely to work the other way. A person in a high-profile position with a professional reputation, salary, career, and a family to feed is unlikely to publicly express agreement with a controversial conspiracy. To do so would be a major career risk. This applies to most newspaper editors, career journalists, career academics, and career politicians. The self-sealing quality of conspiracy theories in which contrary evidence is disregarded as disinformation also works in reverse. Those who wish to avoid feelings of insecurity and anxiety regarding the activities of powerful people and institutions may disregard all evidence of corruption as paranoid delusion, irrespective of verifiable facts. Government-promoted terrorism theories also have a self-sealing quality. Consider that most of the Guantanamo Bay prisoners haven't been charged despite prolonged interrogation and apparently torture. The US government has been determined to see Al-Qaeda sleeper cells in all corners of the world, and repeated denials by Guantanamo prisoners are disregarded as part of the terrorist plot. When it comes to terrorism, the US government is acting like the classic paranoid conspiracy theorist stereotype. The conspiracy entrepreneur motive of profit through paranoia also works in reverse, as there are many books being sold attempting to debunk conspiracy theories, and many journalists, editors and film crews are receiving a salary for doing the same. Military and intelligence institutions also earn their bread and butter from conflict arising from mass dissemination of their own conspiracy theories. The 9/11 conspiracy theories themselves conflict with several of the key points in Sunstein and Vermeulen's article. The authors claim that bad events inevitably cause rumours and speculation as an outlet for outrage and blame, but in the case of 9/11, virtually all of the hostility of the American public was focused upon Islamic terrorists and the Middle East in general. It took several years and two imperialistic wars in the Middle East before large portions of the public widely began to question the government's account of the World Trade Center attacks. This also conflicts with Sunstein and Vermeule's assumption that conspiracy theorists have limited access to information about a particular event. In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, information was limited and emotions were raw. As years went by, more information became available through the 9/11 Commission report and other sources, while emotional intensity of public opinion had dropped on the subject. The rise of 9/11 conspiracy theories was the result of diversified information, but the authors claim that diversifying information is the antidote to conspiracy theories. Here's another flaw of the article. Although the authors claim that the erosion of civil rights and liberties fuel conspiracy theories and in turn terrorism, their article goes on later to explain that conspiracy theories are a threat to the efforts of counter-terrorism and thus need to be debunked. This is a circular argument. Terrorism causes counter-terrorism, causes erosion of civil rights and liberties, causes conspiracy theories, causes terrorism, repeat, repeat, repeat. Counter-terrorism is, after all, the government's response to its own conspiracy theories. As we've seen recently through Guantanamo Bay and the wars of Afghanistan and Iraq, government conspiracy theories are often even more dangerous than those held by other social or political groups. Taking a broader historical perspective, paranoid conspiracy theories disseminated by governments have led to war-inflicted death tolls amounting globally to hundreds of millions, and can justifiably be considered to be the most destructive feature of human civilization. In another of the article's flaws, the authors speak of group polarization into camps of extreme agreement and disagreement, yet the very terms conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist create group polarization on a mass scale, preventing genuine media debate on the issues. Sunstein and Vermeule's article and its title is actually contributing to that very polarization process, because they don't challenge the flawed logic of the conspiracy theorist stereotype. Yet another flaw is the author's claims that conspiracy theories overestimate the competence and discretion of officials and bureaucracies. The creation of the atom bomb, the landing of men on the moon, and the Holocaust of World War II attribute a level of competence and discretion of officials and bureaucracies that surpasses that which is assumed by most major conspiracy theories. Many conspiracy theories are actually a rejection of the idea that groups would have the competence and discretion to carry out particular plans. For example, the idea that the US government and NASA could pull off a moon landing assumes as much competence as the idea that they could stage it. The official story of 9/11 attributes as much competence and discretion to a group of 19 Al-Qaeda hijackers as the inside job theory attributes to the CIA. In addition, conspiracy theories often assume that powerful institutions carry out crimes because they have become overconfident or desperate rather than competent and discreet, just as an egotistical criminal increasingly takes larger risks until caught. And finally, the social and informational limitations and self-selecting membership of conspiracy groups are also a feature of political parties, intelligence agencies, corporate boardrooms, institutional religions, sports teams, national identities, cultures and ethnicities, military institutions, and many other social groups. Yet we don't disregard people as being irrational and uninformed based upon their membership of those groups. To some small extent, we've already touched on how governments perceive and respond to conspiracy theories. For example, the brief rebuttals of several conspiracy theory accusations at the website america.gov. The page forms a sort of collective rebuttal of all accusations of corruption. However, this direct rebuttal from governments to the citizens is out of the norm. The conspiracy debates are mostly left to occur in citizens' own homes, internet chat rooms, bars, campaign groups, academic circles, and in the circus arena of corporate media. Perhaps, as Cass Sunstein explained, this really is because those governments consider dialogue in their own defence to be futile. But it could also be that there is truth to some of the conspiracy theories, and naturally governments don't want to implicate themselves. There are two specific areas in which conspiracy theories are more frequently commented on by representatives of government. One, when officials or lower-ranking whistleblowers publicly accuse others in government of conspiracy, or two, when one government accuses another of conspiracy. Frequently, whistleblowing comes from former government employees who don't have a career to protect, and sometimes whistleblowers will seek refuge in another country in the process. Alexander Litvinenko, for example, who had written books claiming that terror attacks in Russia were carried out by the state itself. And note that after his death by poison, the Russian and UK governments publicly expressed conspiracy theory accusations attributing responsibility to each other. In cases of conspiracy accusations between different government departments, the ensuing debates in courtrooms can be very informative because those doing the accusing, assuming they don't have some ulterior motive, are acting from a position that is the opposite of what Cass Sunstein calls crippled epistemology. They are people who have had direct access to information on the topic in question. Several of the most controversial and widely believed conspiracy theories have been fueled in this way, such as those relating to the Waco siege, 9/11, climate change, and the invasion of Iraq. Conspiracy accusations from one government to another are more varied. Sometimes it's as simple as the leader of a country standing up and accusing another government on the world stage. For example, Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez and Iran's Mahmoud Ahmadinejad have publicly expressed their belief in the 9/11 conspiracy theory. In other instances, governments allow the broadcasting of conspiracy theory documentary films on primetime television, films in which other governments are the subjects of accusation. Yet similar documentaries in which the host country government is the accused are shown less frequently. For example, as of January 2007, the 9/11 conspiracy film Loose Change has been broadcast in 12 countries, according to The Guardian. It has also been subjected to an organised distribution campaign in Germany. Despite being one of the most widely downloaded and viewed films of all time, Loose Change has received hardly any broadcasts on US television and has never been broadcast in the UK or received a cinema release, nor is the DVD available in high street retail stores. Another example of these international variations on media coverage of conspiracy theories is the best-selling Chinese book, Currency Wars, apparently popular with Chinese officials. From the reviews I've read, it appears that this book basically puts forth the same argument already expressed by Western academics and writers, such as Anthony C. Sutton, who wrote The Federal Reserve Conspiracy and the War on Gold, Janine Weddell, who wrote Shadow Elite, and John Perkins, who wrote Confessions of an Economic Hitman. The argument that Western economies and governments are largely controlled by privately owned central banks, such as the Federal Reserve of the US. In this article of the Foreign Policy blog network, Henry Hoyle describes the Currency Wars book's assertions as delusions, yet he also offers a conspiracy theory of his own, suggesting that the Chinese government may well have intentionally whipped up public sentiment to feign powerlessness in private conversations with pushy diplomats. Hoyle also offers some thought on government management of conspiracy theories. Though he is specifically discussing China, his comments are also applicable to governments in general. The received wisdom in Chinese political studies is that while the government is beholden to public opinion in the short term, it has plenty of latitude to mould that opinion in the long run. The opposition of the masses to any given policy is thus only a temporary obstacle. It can be assuaged in due time with corrective public opinion management. As the leadership can not always be of one mind about everything, we should not be surprised if the party's opinion management work reflects this indecision. The validity of the conventional wisdom is contingent on elite opinion being unified. Otherwise, the sentiments of the masses may yet prove to be a wild card in foreign policy making. A more recent variation on the dissemination of conspiracy theories by one government against another is the globally broadcast news channel Russia Today, also known as RT. As the name suggests, its headquarters are in Moscow, but what is interesting about Russia Today is that many of its reporters are Americans or British people working for the channel from outside of Russia. Some of these reporters would very unlikely be employed by US or UK media sources because of their highly critical views of their own governments. For example, the RT reporter Webster Tarpley, who frequently asserts that Western intelligence and defence organisations stage foiled terror attacks in their own countries to keep the war on terror going. Being that these conspiracy theory assertions are coming from Western reporters, it's difficult to accuse RT of biased reporting. Like any major media outlet, RT will have some bias towards the national interests of its own country of origin, but such sources are useful in that they offer a variation of opinion and subject matter that can be contrasted with media in other countries. Several conspiracy theories about the West were favourably hinted at in a series of billboard ads by Russia Today in 2009. And the clash of opinion resulting between Russian and British-funded journalism is evident in this Telegraph article attacking the credibility of Russia Today. In the embedded video, which has since been removed, the argument declined into a battle of personal attacks and petty insults coming from supposed professionals. And in this surprisingly frank admission, US media heavyweight Walter Isaacson explains, "We can't allow ourselves to be outcommunicated by our enemies." And he makes specific reference to Russia Today and several other non-US news channels. Despite all of this international interest and controversy over conspiracy theories, government response to conspiracy theories at the national level is minimal. It's also very difficult to find policy papers on the subject. Fortunately for our study here, the Conspiracy Theories article by Cass Sunstein and Adrian Vermeulen contains a series of policy suggestions as to how the US government and intelligence agencies might deal with the challenge of conspiracy theories. How can government get behind or around the distinctive feature of conspiracy theories, their self-sealing quality, which tends to fold government's denials into the theory itself as further evidence of the conspiracy? An obvious answer is to maintain an open society in which those who are tempted to subscribe to conspiracy theories do not distrust all knowledge-creating institutions and are exposed to corrections. Thankfully, the authors are talking some sense here. If society becomes less open, as in limitation of free speech and infringement on liberties, then justified and accurate conspiracy theories would flourish, fueling appropriate resistance and, if necessary, revolution. And I would like to believe that Sunstein and Vermeulen would do the right thing and join that resistance. But note that they are assuming that the open society is something that the US government is in a position to choose between maintaining and abandoning. An open society shouldn't be seen as a simple way of rebutting conspiracy theories and stemming revolution. It should be an ideal pursued by high-ranking officials, such as Cass Sunstein, because it's the right thing to do. The authors offer the following strategies for policy consideration. This is in their own words. 1. The government might ban conspiracy theorizing. 2. The government might impose some kind of tax, financial or otherwise, on those who disseminate such theories. 3. Government might itself engage in counter-speech, marshalling arguments to discredit conspiracy theories. 4. Government might formally hire credible private parties to engage in counter-speech. Or 5. Government might engage in informal communication with such parties, encouraging them to help. Fortunately, the authors disregard the first two options, which if pursued would validate many of the conspiracy theories, causing wider dissemination, acceptance and revolt. But unfortunately, they conclude, our main policy idea is that government should engage in cognitive infiltration of the groups that produce conspiracy theories, which involves a mix of 3, 4 and 5. This cognitive infiltration is then broken down into the following actions. I'll summarise the first action as the quote is long-winded. 1. Government and its covert operatives should rebut several conspiracy theories at once, so as not to bring too much attention to a particular conspiracy theory that is hard to rebut on its own. The grouping of persistent and widely believed conspiracies with more absurd ones has an effect of discrediting them all by association. And 2, and this is a quote, government agents and their allies might enter chat rooms, online social networks or even real space groups and attempt to undermine percolating conspiracy theories by raising doubts about their factual premises, causal logic or implications for political action. Additional strategies and insights offered by the authors are as follows. All misinformation, the initial conspiracy theory, should be met with counter-misinformation. In a typical pattern, government plays a wait-and-see strategy. Ignore the conspiracy theory until it reaches some ill-defined threshold level of widespread popularity, and then rebut. Government might do well to maintain a more vigorous counter-misinformation establishment than it would otherwise do, one that identifies and rebuts many more conspiracy theories would otherwise be rebutted. Government cannot be seen to control the independent experts. Although government can supply these independent experts with information and perhaps prod them into action from behind the scenes, too close a connection will prove self-defeating if it is exposed, as witnessed the humiliating disclosures showing that apparently independent opinions on scientific and regulatory questions were in fact paid for by think tanks with ties to the Bush administration. Many officials dismiss direct responses to the suppliers of conspiracy theories as an exercise in futility. Rather, they implicitly frame their responses to the third-party mass audience, hoping to stem the spread of conspiracy theories by dampening the demand rather than by reducing the supply. This is the legitimation dilemma again. To begin a program of inoculation is to signal that the disease is already widespread and threatening. Regarding the risks of cognitive infiltration, the authors explain, infiltration of any kind poses well-known risks. Perhaps agents will be asked to perform criminal acts to prove their bona fides. Or, less plausibly, will themselves become persuaded by the conspiratorial views that they are supposed to be undermining. Perhaps agents will be unmasked and harmed by the infiltrated group. The assertion that agents may become persuaded by the conspiratorial views doesn't exactly support the author's confident assertions as to which conspiracy theories are based upon crippled epistemology and which are actually credible when examined in detail. What is really odd about Sunstein and Vermeule's article Conspiracy Theories is that it is a publicly available policy paper. Surely the publishing of such policy recommendations would undermine the effectiveness of the cognitive infiltration tactics. This is certainly true in that Dr. David Ray Griffin, a prominent 9/11 conspiracy theorist, or truther depending on your point of view, has responded to their report with a critical book called Cognitive Infiltration. It could be that Sunstein and Vermeule made their report public so as to generate paranoia and mutual suspicion among 9/11 activists. It could be that they believe in the 9/11 conspiracy theory and are trying to warn activists of efforts to undermine them. Or perhaps they thought nobody except the relevant government officials would bother reading the report. Cognitive infiltration is a policy of propaganda, deception and attempted mass mind control, through virtual infiltration and the covert hiring, bribing and indirect recruitment of respected public figures. Figures who the public believe have no direct connection to government. The basic assumption held by Sunstein and Vermeule is that an honest, open debate with the public should be avoided because the public are incapable of it and will inevitably be drawn into believing the conspiracy theories. A government's response to conspiracy theories, if it wishes to retain a high majority of public trust, should be as follows. 1. Announce its arguments against conspiracy theories through its own speakers, not through covert sources. And 2. Allow full independent investigations into the most widely held conspiracy theories, publishing the full results for public consumption so that A. the government's innocence in the matter is established beyond doubt, or B. the perpetrators of real conspiracies are held to account, removed from office and punished accordingly. This is a democratic approach to conspiracy theories that would be the hallmark of a genuine open society. Judging by how Western media sources have been covering the topic of conspiracy theories, especially in Britain and America, the practice of cognitive infiltration has likely been in wide operation for many years. It is an undemocratic manipulation tactic more suited to the fascist and communist regimes of Hitler and Stalin, and it is designed to promote an illusion of an open society while simultaneously undermining it. If an individual citizen is suspected of some major crime, they are not afforded the bias of covert cognitive infiltration against their accusers. The evidence is assessed by unbiased and independent experts who have no personal, financial or political links to the defendant. If the evidence is good, a charge is made. The defendant is then taken to trial and has a chance to defend their case, but with all of the evidence presented by the prosecution also being taken into consideration by an impartial jury. The term conspiracy theory holds no place in these democratic courtroom proceedings, and it shouldn't hold any place in the investigation of suspected crimes by government officials or their close associates. Cognitive infiltration is, hypocritically, a conspiracy against conspiracy theorists. It is morally and legally unsound. It's a conspiracy against people's democratic right to criticize and investigate the activities of governmental institutions. In addition to those described earlier in this article, there are many examples of media sources using similar cognitive infiltration tactics to those suggested by Sunstein and Vermeulen. We don't have any immediate way of knowing which, if any of them, have been recruited or otherwise influenced by government PR experts, and which of them are simply supporting government rhetoric as a strategy of career advancement. Nor can we disregard those possibilities. In this March 2010 article for Foreign Policy magazine called On Conspiracy Theories, Stephen M. Walt attempts to refute allegations of a neoconservative plot to engineer a war with Iraq. He does so by initially likening the accusation to a variety of other conspiracy theories, including the moon landings and Area 51 UFOs, and then goes on to make claims about the supposedly limited rationality of people who do happen to believe in those specific conspiracy theories. His style very much echoes the recommendations of Sunstein and Vermeulen. To support his character assassination of conspiracy theorists, Walt also cites preposterous claims about secret Jewish influence, such as the infamous Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a notorious Tsarist-era forgery. Yet in 2007, Walt co-authored the book The Israel Lobby and US Foreign Policy. This book and its source paper origins were the subject of heated debate. According to National Public Radio, the initial paper was the subject of a fiery 40-page critique by law professor Alan Dershowitz that compared the study to the Protocols of Zion, a historic anti-Semitic slur. Walt knows what it's like to be denounced as a conspiracy theorist, yet he employs the same emotionally charged identity politics and stereotyping against others to advance his career. He promotes a stereotype of crazy conspiracy theorists while simultaneously trying to undermine the anti-Semite stereotype that he himself was labelled with. Another tactic that is used by debaters at all levels of society, including government officials, to block mature debate of conspiracy theories is the straw man. The concept is simple. Select the most predictable, most emotionally unbalanced, least articulate, least well researched, and least well respected proponents of the argument you wish to undermine. Then engage them in public debate or quote them as if they are the leaders of your opposition. It's like fixing a boxing match. After the easy knockout, a stereotype will be embedded in the public mind that assumes all proponents of the argument are lacking in intelligence, maturity and credibility. This makes it harder for the more convincing proponents of that argument to find a receptive audience. The straw man technique is rife in modern political discourse. For example, opponents of immigration in Britain will cite the worst examples of crimes by immigrants to tar all immigrants with a criminal stereotype, while at the same time Europhiles will cite racist characters in the BNP or the EDL to promote a stereotype of all opponents of immigration as being racist. Both sides use the straw man tactic. There are thousands of conspiracy theory claims made every day across all forms of media distribution, but the term conspiracy theory isn't always applied. The vast ocean of information on these subjects is far too great for any individual or even any government to fully absorb. On that basis, it is crucial that any person or group wishing to explore such matters should begin with a set of reliable information filters and organising principles. You will already have filters and organising principles of your own, but it's likely that many of those perceptive habits are unconscious. It's also likely that you have picked up these habits in contexts not related to conspiracy. In normal everyday affairs, people are used to trusting the opinions, or at least the sincerity, of most people in their lives, such as family, friends and long-term colleagues. Strangers and employers are less trusted, hence we lock our doors and double-check our employment contracts before signing on the dotted line. In those contexts, we are entertaining small conspiracy theories that our homes may be burgled or that our employers may pay us less wages for more work. If a friendly but unknown person knocks on our door or calls us by phone, we may be polite in our response, but extremely sceptical of anything they have to say. The question resounding in our minds, what is this person trying to get out of me? Basically, when we are engaging with people who we do not have a long-term mutual emotional investment with, we maintain shields of defensive skepticism. If we notice suspicious behaviour, then we begin entertaining small conspiracy theories as to what the person may be covertly trying to achieve. We may even discuss those conspiracy theories with friends. However, the unconscious skepticism we naturally hold in our daily interactions with strangers tends to veer toward the idea that some people are simple opportunists trying to make a buck here or there, or in some other way take short-term advantage of us. So most of us are competent at detecting small, unsophisticated plots by untrustworthy people, but we tend to be less adept at defending ourselves against society's more intelligent manipulators. The difficulty with defending ourselves against intelligent manipulators is that such people are often familiar with our information filters and organising principles. On that basis, a good salesman, con artist, or perhaps even a person who wishes to sexually exploit us in some way can often work around our perceptual defences and achieve their aim. It's the same process by which a stage magician surpasses our sensory filters to make the impossible appear completely real. Throughout our lives, we hear of, read of and witness many people being exploited by common intelligent manipulators, and occasionally it happens to us individually. The degree to which we are each personally subjected to manipulation of this type depends on several factors: our social environment, our financial status, and what allies we have who will fight in our defence. But the key factor is our own information filtering and organising principles. The analogy of a police detective applies well here. Most of us would not be good at investigating complex crimes in which perpetrators have used intelligent tactics to work around the average person's perceptual habits. The criminal may have attempted to hide all evidence that a crime has taken place. They may attempt to disguise the crime as some coincidental or unintended sequence of events, or they may attempt to lay false evidence so that another source becomes the subject of investigation. Police investigators will be familiar with many of these tactics. The average person won't. In particular, crimes committed by teams of intelligent manipulators who have greater than average financial or manpower resources at their disposal will be even more difficult to investigate. We call this organised crime, and our governments pay teams of experienced investigators large sums of our tax money to investigate and pursue those teams of manipulators. The complexity of organised crimes and their investigation goes beyond the perceptual habits of the average citizen. Without the provision of sophisticated police investigation units, society would be largely at the mercy of organised criminals. To an extent, we could say that this is already the case, considering the volume of illegal drugs that make their way onto our streets in Western countries. Either the units assigned to stop drug traffickers are under-resourced compared to the criminals they're chasing, or the tactics used by the drug traffickers are too sophisticated. But then again, there are conspiracy theories claiming that intelligence agencies are at the centre of drug trafficking. But when we get to the topic of high-level political corruption, or corruption coming from sources that have great influence over government, the investigative system falls apart. For the very power institutions that funnel tax money into combating organised crime are highly unlikely to funnel sufficient money into policing themselves. They may do so on a small level as a cosmetic measure to satisfy the public, but anything beyond that is unlikely. corporate, military, political and intelligence agency crimes, as well as being less subject to the checks and balances of well-funded and independent investigative authorities, are also likely to be the most complex and sophisticated of all crimes. This is simply down to the fact that they have access to great resources and can hire the most intelligent and experienced personnel to plan and execute criminal activities, if they're that way inclined. Governments and related power institutions are sometimes held to account by other governments and institutions, sometimes as a result of war, but generally it is up to populations to collectively keep a watchful eye on the activities of the powerful and to spread campaigns of awareness among other citizens. Bottom-up policing, if you will. Corporate-funded media, intelligence agencies and government-funded policing institutions are limited in this role because their interests are often intertwined with such power institutions. At this technologically sophisticated point in human history, the scope for ordinary citizens to monitor power institutions and spread awareness of corruption is greater than it has ever been. The average citizen has access to printers, email, DVD players and a multitude of other information distribution outlets. This has become a major problem for power institutions. The Big Brother surveillance society swings both ways, and so now governments are having a major problem with what they consistently call conspiracy theories. A few major difficulties have emerged with this new public monitoring of power institutions. 1. Poor research is being widely disseminated on many conspiracy subjects due to the limited investigative skills or personal bias of those doing the research. 2. Conspiracy theory dissemination has developed a commercial edge, with some films and books being sold for higher prices than would be expected in high street retail stores. 3. In some instances, conspiracy theories may be vindictively fabricated to bring disrepute to some other individual, organisation or government. 4. In some instances, conspiracy theory dissemination may be part of a cognitive infiltration tactic designed to discredit more convincing versions of the same conspiracy, or to discredit conspiracy theories in general. And 5. In some instances, conspiracy theories may be covertly disseminated by one government or power institution to demonize another. These complex interactions of conflicting agendas and informational one-upmanship can quickly turn a simple conspiracy theory into a vast puzzle. But much of the information can quickly be discarded if we are applying reliable perceptual filters. Here's a list of information filtering and organizing principles that you can use to assess any given conspiracy theory. I suggest you make a note of them and keep the list at hand when exploring any given example. Remember, I'm not going to make reference to specific conspiracy theory examples because to do so would run the risk of my indirectly swaying you into believing or disbelieving them. 1. Reserve judgment at the information gathering stage. 2. Gather as much information as you can. 3. Double check each detail. 4. Use multiple, preferably unrelated sources. 5. Delete repetitions of the same information. 6. Pay equal attention to purveyors and debunkers, regardless of their character traits. 7. There's no such thing as a reliable source. Always double check their claims. 8. Ignore persuasion cascades. Quite simply, this means discarding the assumption that the higher the percentage of society who believe in something, the more likely it is to be true. Most people will not have done the research into a specific matter that is required to reach a well-formed conclusion of their own. They will have formed their opinions based upon rumour and mass media dissemination of an idea. 9. Beware of missing contexts. Often, small chunks of information are used to promote or debunk a specific conspiracy theory. This might consist of a few lines of quoted text taken from a long speech or a few seconds of video in which the events leading up to the footage are not communicated. Vague language, circumstantial details or unspecified dates, locations or names can also be misleading. 10. Claims are not proof. This may sound obvious, but we actually build a great portion of our perceived reality based upon the claims of others, and it can be difficult to switch off the habit. When it comes to investigating crimes or conspiracy theories, Every single claim should be checked against external, sensory verifiable sources whenever possible. 11. Never invest 100% belief. Always allow for the possibility that something can be proven or disproved. As soon as you psychologically shut off a particular possibility, information to the contrary will become filtered out of your awareness. 12. Avoid the guru trap. In the realm of popular conspiracy theories, some investigative journalists and researchers have reached high levels of fame. They are then put on a pedestal of trust in the same way that some people trust their favourite broadsheet newspaper or news channel. There's nothing wrong with expressing respect and appreciation for the efforts of a researcher who, against great odds, has successfully disseminated quality information. But don't fall into the trap of letting that person do all your research for you. Double check their claims as you would with any other source. 13. Use visual aids to organise complex information. Especially when attempting to understand large organisational hierarchies or detailed event chronologies, mind mapping, list making and categorising of information are essential. Try different ways of mapping and remapping your information based upon different organising principles. 14. Don't oversimplify in your conclusions. Forget about Occam's razor. The idea that simple explanations are preferable to complex ones is merely a device of short-term perceptual convenience. Reality is incredibly complex. If you oversimplify your conclusions, for example to claim that a specific conspiracy is wholly true or wholly untrue, then you are basically falling into the polarization trap. Many conspiracy theories, when explored in detail, turn out to be complex sequences of events. Some of the players involved may have immorally engaged in conspiracy from the start, while others were either unaware, made a poor choice out of good intentions, were willfully ignorant of it, or were afraid to challenge it. A conspiracy may start out small and then grow into a sequence of cover-up after cover-up that gets out of hand. There are lots of middle ground possibilities. 15. Familiarise yourself with the psychology of crime, corruption and power hierarchies. The list I've offered may seem awkward, but each of these perceptual principles, if practiced, can easily be adopted into your natural thought process, so that they occur automatically. Complex conspiracy theories and their rebuttals can then be more quickly and easily assessed and understood. In conspiracy theory debates, patterns of disagreement typically turn into one party calling the other person's opinion a conspiracy theory, and usually following on calling that person a conspiracy theorist. The response from the conspiracy theorist then tends to consist of any combination of the following. 1. Claiming that the conspiracy is strongly supported by evidence and is therefore a fact, not a theory. 2. Claiming that the person who disbelieves the conspiracy is in denial or has been brainwashed by the mainstream media. And 3. Claiming that conspiracies do happen, offering well-known historical examples to support that assertion. Although there can be some truth to any of these three typical responses, they do not always support the particular conspiracy theory in question. The second and third responses especially have become convenient clichés, just as the term conspiracy theorist has. Of course, any debate should be decided on evidence, but discussions of evidence tend to consist of back and forth straw man arguments. Each side steers a discussion in the direction of what they perceive to be the weakest links in the opponent's arguments, while avoiding the stronger points. In the case of a complex conspiracy theory, this can lead to an endless circular argument that bores and frustrates both observers and the debaters themselves. So I'd like to offer some suggestions here that will aid those on both sides of a conspiracy theory debate. For those listening to unconvincing claims of conspiracy, 1. Let the person know that you are aware that conspiracies do happen, and offer some historical examples. Then explain to the person that you don't find the conspiracy theory they presented as being convincing. Explain why and ask them if they have any other information on the subject. 2. Don't voice any judgments about the character of the person communicating the conspiracy theory. No matter what their personality is like, there is always the possibility of at least some truth to their claims. If you attack their identity, you will simply be guiding them into the position of perceiving you as A. a person who lacks knowledge of real historical examples of conspiracy, or B. a person who is in a comfort zone of denial. Once these positions of mutual disrespect have been adopted, the argument becomes a circular waste of time. 3. Pay attention to both the stronger and weaker points of the conspiracy theory argument. 4. Discuss the topic not from the position of already knowing the conspiracy theory to be 100% wrong, but from the position that together you will assess the information for mutual learning. Let the person know that you are taking this respectful and open-minded position. It will encourage them to take the same approach. In achieving this position, there's a greater chance that one of you, or even both of you, will learn something useful. 5. If the discussion becomes complex, ask the conspiracy theorist to write down all of the information they have on the subject. By doing this, you mutually sort through the information without going in circles, writing down your conclusions and points of agreement as you go along. 6. Don't insult the conspiracy theorist after and if you manage to cast significant doubt on their initial claims. Praise them for having the courage to investigate the matter. After all, they were likely acting from a position of genuine concern. Let them know that, even though they may have been mistaken in this particular instance, there are instances of genuine conspiracy, and that, without members of the public taking steps to investigate, some of those conspiracies would not be exposed at all. And 7. If you cast significant doubt on the conspiracy theory, try to offer some basic constructive feedback about how the individual can avoid falling into the same perceptual trap in relation to other unsubstantiated conspiracy theories. For those communicating claims of conspiracy, I advise the following. 1. Let the person know you are aware that some conspiracy theories are untrue, and offer some examples. Then let the person know that sometimes conspiracies do happen. Again, offer some historical examples that they will be familiar with. Then explain the basic premise of your conspiracy theory, outlining the most important evidence, while also letting them know that you are open to the possibility that you are mistaken, providing a significant argument against the theory is offered. 2. Don't voice any judgments about the character of the person listening to your conspiracy theory. No matter what their personality is like, there's always a possibility of at least some truth to their disagreement. If you attack their identity, you will be simply guiding them into the position of perceiving you as a person who A. has a paranoid worldview and an inherent distrust of authority, or B. likes to blame other circumstances out of their control for the failings and shortcomings of their own life. 3. Pay attention to both the stronger and weaker points of the conspiracy theory disagreement. 4. Discuss the topic not from the position of already knowing the conspiracy theory to be 100% true, but from the position that together you will assess the information for mutual learning. Let the person know that you are taking this respectful and open-minded decision. It will encourage them to take the same approach. In achieving this position, there's a greater chance that one of you, or even both of you, will learn something. 5. If the discussion becomes complex, write down all of the information you have on the subject. You can then mutually sort through the information without going in circles, writing down your conclusions and points of agreement as you do so. 6. Do not insult the listener after and if you manage to cast significant credibility on your conspiracy claims. Praise them for having the courage to listen to a difficult subject. After all, they were likely acting from a position of genuine disbelief. Let them know that, even though they may have been mistaken in this particular instance, there are instances of conspiracy that turn out to be false, and that, without members of the public taking steps to point out the flaws of such arguments, some of those false conspiracies would go on to be widely believed. 7. If you cast significant credibility on your conspiracy theory, try to offer some basic constructive feedback about how the individual can avoid falling into the same perceptual trap in relation to other conspiracy theories. And 8. If at any point in the debate the listener attempts to dismiss you as a conspiracy theorist or labels your argument as conspiracy theory, explain that everybody from individual citizens to entire governments believes in and disseminates conspiracy theories. Offer as many historical examples as you need, including ones that the listener believes in. Do this politely and ask them to reconsider their conspiracy theorist accusation for the duration of that discussion so that you can mutually share information and reach a constructive conclusion. Thanks for watching.